Welcome to Vinyl Dens on channel 33 RPM. This is the monthly segment where we check out cool music rooms from across the vinyl community and around the world. I gotta tell you, this episode is gonna be awesome. Alright, this first submission comes from Sammy, 55 years old. He says he's from Pakistan, but he moved to Saudi Arabia in 2006 for work, and he is still there. Sammy writes, the very first thing I do every evening is switch on the TV and go to the YouTube list of subscribed channels I have, and when I see your new video uploaded, I sit back in my sofa excitedly and watch it with a cup of coffee. Awesome. Thank you very much, Sammy. I appreciate that. He writes, my music collection is small and mainly classic rock from the 80s. He says his listening room is small as well, hence the Celestion speakers being wrongly placed. He writes the heart of his system is a 1977 Marantz 250M power amp, and it sounds beautiful to his ears. Sammy has two systems, a 1970s system and a 1980s system spread over several stands in his room. I'm not going to go through all his gear because he's got so much stuff here, but a couple highlights include 1979 Sony direct drive semi-automatic turntable equipped with a Shure 95M ED cartridge, and a 1978 Sony direct drive fully automatic with an Ortophone DJ cartridge. He owns 7 cassette decks, 2 turntables, and 3 equalizers, among a bunch of other awesome stuff here. He also has both 2-track and 4-track reel-to-reels. He says his walls are covered in original records that he bought on eBay for decorations. He says the ones with the sleeves and album covers are there for both display and decoration. He's got a guitar on his wall, and I got a comment on this boombox, or ghetto blaster as I used to call them back in the days. That's a Panasonic RXC34. Man, that would have been my dream to own one of those back in 1986. Sammy also has a YouTube channel, and he posted a video where he goes through all of his gear in detail. You got to check that out. I will leave a link to that below this video. Sammy, thank you very much for sending your stuff over, and continue to enjoy your space because it is awesome. All right, 33, it's time to upgrade your vinyl den. You gotta check out the record storage consoles from my friends at Sidetracked Workshop, the sponsor of today's video. These record storage consoles are gorgeous. It's not flat-packed, bolt-together furniture. This is the real deal. High-quality, sturdy, all-wood construction, handcrafted in the USA by Sidetracked Workshop. The consoles come to you fully assembled. It's that easy. You only need to screw on the feet and you're set. And shipping is free in the US. You spend a lot of time and money on your record collection. Show it off proudly in style with these beautiful mid-century modern designs. Head over to sidetrackedworkshop.com to learn more. And when you're ready to buy, use code 33RPM for a 15% discount. All right, check this one out. This comes from George. Our musical tastes are really aligned, isn't it? Kiss, Priest, Maiden, some of my favorite bands. Let's check this out. He writes, hi, my name is George from South Amboy, New Jersey. George says he's been collecting music since 1983 and he is now 53 years old. He says he started with vinyl back in the day but moved on to CDs in 1989 and hasn't looked back. Speaking of CDs, man, check out all those compact discs. That's awesome. How would you organize that many CDs? Would you alphabetize them? How would you figure out which CD is where? Curious minds, inquiring minds want to know. George writes, the vinyl in the picks are my old ones from the 80s. Hard rock / metal make up my 2,800 CDs and 130 vinyl records. My music room is my son's old room when he took over my daughter's room when she moved out. So George repurposed the space. He says a stereo is a Philips Bluetooth CD player with wireless streaming. No turntable as of yet. Check this out. That Kiss Rock and Roll over rug is awesome, man. I also love that Ace Frehley poster on the wall. Is that Dynasty era, maybe? That's what I'm thinking. And what is up with that Eric Carr jacket? What's the story there? Eric Carr was the drummer in Kiss, replacing Peter Criss. Love it, George. Okay, this one comes from Mike. And speaking of cool rugs, check out the floor decor in this vinyl den. That is freaking awesome, man. I love all of the record covers. Let's see what Mike wrote. He wrote, big fan of the channel and seeing other enthusiasts' setups, especially great for inspiration. Mike says he's 37 and lives in Ottawa, Canada. Mike writes, my space isn't huge, but it is pretty densely packed. It's predominantly used as a listening space, but occasionally he uses it for movie nights as well. I love the fact that he's got the vinyl dens up on his big screen there. That's very cool. Mike writes, I've got my vinyl set up in old dresser drawers that are reinforced and added legs to. That's cool, man. That's a great way to display the records. So I recently had to build a new CD storage solution and decided to add shelves to an antique door. And he backlit that with LEDs that shine through the glass window of the door. And he says he may need to make a second one soon. That's cool, man. That's thinking outside the box. Creative ideas for storing physical media. In terms of that rug in the middle of the room I mentioned, he says that was ordered through a seller on Amazon that prints any image you provide. He says he chose the albums and created a JPEG file for them to use. I love that idea, man. I love that idea, Mike. Super cool. Mike writes, most of my components are Harman Kardon. The receiver is the AVR 7200 that runs all my Boston Acoustics speakers. That's cool, man. As someone, speaking for myself, who loves movies and music and popcorn, I'd be down to hanging out in this basement anytime. All right, we got Chad here, and I thought this one was kind of interesting. There is a lot going on. Okay, Chad also has a YouTube channel, and he writes, currently living in Hammond, Louisiana. I'm 42 and claim to have always collected records going back to a Fisher-Price record player with a Fraggle Rock and Sesame Street 45. Yeah, that's how many of us started for sure back in the day. It says in the early 2000s, when records were practically valueless, he would grab every Dylan Young, Stones, and Paul Simon record he could get for no more than $1 each. It says he produces 2 radio programs a week, 2 hours a week. One is Old Gospel Show, and the other one is sort of a primitive rock and roll theme. Both are exclusively vinyl. In terms of gear, he's got a ton here. I'm not going to go through it all, but he does have Stanton and Audio-Technica turntables. Says he has a lot of storage in his room for finished art and art supplies, so he's also an artist. He says, when I'm not recording the shows, I'm working on art, which is mostly collage type stuff, or I'm recording music, which is mostly tucked away in the closet because there's not a lot of room for 3 things in the space. I love the fact that you were collecting records in the early 2000s when many people weren't, because that was the time to get all the awesome stuff for ridiculously low prices. That's cool, man. Chad, thank you for sending your spaces. Spaces. Thank you for sending all of this. Okay, this one comes from Paul, and man, I love all those guitars on the wall there, Paul. Paul says, hello, I'm Paul, and I live in Derbyshire, United Kingdom, and love to watch your channel. Very inspirational and encouraging. Awesome, man. Paul, I do appreciate you saying that. Paul writes, I've been collecting records and sound equipment since I was about 7 years old when my mother bought me an old record player from a charity auction. He says his listening room is located in the spare bedroom in our family home, and it's a bit too small for my speakers, but looking to the future, I envision getting a larger listening room. Fingers crossed. Paul writes, all this equipment gets used in rotation and consists of 3 Technics SL1200 Mark II turntables and an SL1200 GR turntable, which are all connected to this mixer. He says he also loves vintage turntables and has 3 Gerard 401s and a Gerard 301 as well. Paul also has a bunch of other cool vintage gear, including these awesome looking reel-to-reel players. This is awesome, man. Records, awesome gear, awesome vintage gear, cool guitars. He's got a little orange practice amp there. Paul, man, you got an awesome taste and stuff. I dig it, man. All right, this comes from Frank. I gotta say, that's a very powerful and strong name. I dig it. He says, Frank says, "Hi Frank, big fan of the channel. Awesome, thank you very much." He says, "I love the Vinyl Den series you have going, and I would like to submit my room." Okay, let's do this. He says he is 53 years old, and he is an audio video technician working in the trade for 30 years in Southwest Florida, USA. Frank writes, "In my trade, I've acquired lots of equipment over the years and I've filled my home with it." He says he has 3 areas of his home which he has set up to enjoy music, movies, and video games. He's got 800 records, 50 cassettes, tons of cool stuff here. I dig the record bins with a light. It's kind of like in a record store, right? Flipping through that stuff. I dig it. And as a guitar player, I also dig the Kiss guitars, including the Ace Frehley Les Paul and the Paul Stanley Iceman. And also what looks maybe to be another Ace Frehley Les Paul on the wall beside that Paul Stanley guitar. I don't know. Frank also has a YouTube channel. I will link to that below this video. Awesome setup. Frank, I appreciate you sending it over, man. All right, this comes from Doug. Doug writes, "Hi Frank, my name is Doug and I am from," I'm gonna mess this up, Keemesha Lake, New York. My apologies if I butcher that. He says this is a small audio room, but he digs it. His gear is in 2 sections, 1 analog, 1 digital. He's got a Macintosh C22 Mark V preamp, a Macintosh 275 Mark VI amp, and a Technics SL1200G Grand Class turntable. And for the digital section, he has a Macintosh MA5300 integrated amp, and his streamer, is a Eversolo DMP A6, and he's got some JBL speakers. Awesome, man. I dig it. Okay, this comes from Brett. Brett writes, "Hey everyone, I'm 55, living in Ohio, USA, and I've been collecting since my teens, mainly metal and rock." And then he says he sold off everything in his 20s to have a family, and now his kids have all flown the coop, and he's back into collecting again big time. Brett writes, "This used to be our living room, and about 3 years ago I started making it into a media room for my love of movies, music, and video games." There you go again, the 3 big things. He's got 726 records. He says his equipment is not very grand, but he has a Pile amp, a Rockville equalizer, and Pile bookshelf speakers. Brett writes, "Just about every surface in this room is covered, and that's the way I like it. Hoping to make my home a pop culture museum for all to see." Very cool, man. If I'm ever in Ohio and you have your pop culture museum going, I will definitely drop by. Okay, this comes from Nick. Nick writes, "Hi Frank, recent subscriber to your channel here from South Wales, UK." Awesome, Nick. Welcome aboard. I appreciate that you subscribed. Nick writes, "In common with a lot of guys my age, I just turned 60. I'm rediscovering vinyl after foolishly selling loads off and buying CDs. It seemed the sensible thing to do back in the early 1990s. Man, I've heard that from so many people, Nick. You're absolutely not alone. There's so many people writing in all the time who sold off their record collections in the 80s, 90s. Nick says his listening room is just our lounge. He writes, "I've got just about 190 LP records, 200 CDs, and a handful of cassettes." Nick writes, "I tend to buy 3 to 4 records a month and sneak them into the cabinet." All right, Nick, let's hope whoever you're hiding from those records from doesn't see this video, because you just outed yourself there, my friend. Nick writes, "Keep on rockin', Frank. Really enjoy your channel. I've got a tiny channel myself called During the Meanwhilest. And his channel is mostly dedicated to photography, but he says he drops the odd music-based video from time to time. I will leave a link to Nick's channel below this video. Cool setup, Nick, and good luck with the YouTube channel. You do seem to be having a lot of fun with it. All right, 33ers, let me know what you thought of today's dens in the comments below. If you want to support this channel, check out the Channel 33 RPM merch store and grab yourself a t-shirt. Thank you for watching. I will be back again really soon. Until then, keep on spinning.